Hello and welcome again to Padai on YouTube channel. This is the fourth part of chapter 6, class 10, respiration. The respiration is a process simply known as breathing. We have discussed the nutrients in organism in the last section. The food material is taken in during the process of nutrition is used in the cell to provide energy for various life process, right? So whatever the food we intake, we do some process to make energy for us. Diverse organisms do these in a different ways. Some use oxygen to break down glucose completely into carbon dioxide and water. Some use other pathways that do not involve oxygen. In all cases, the first step is the breakdown of glucose, a 6-carbon molecule, into a 3-carbon molecule called pyruvate. This process takes place in the cytoplasm. Further, the pyruvate may be converted into ethanol and carbon dioxide. This process takes place in yeast during fermentation. Since this process takes place in the absence of air, it is called anaerobic respiration. Breakdown of pyruvate using oxygen takes place in the mitochondria. So basically, whatever the intakes taken by the organisms, they further proceed to produce the energy, right? And it produced the 6 carbon molecules into 3 carbon molecules and energy. These process break up the 3-carbon pyruvate molecules to give 3 molecules of carbon dioxide. The other product is water. Since this process takes place in the presence of air, it is called aerobic respiration. The release of energy in this aerobic process is a lot greater than in the anaerobic process. Sometimes, when there is a lack of oxygen in our muscle cells, another pathway for the breakdown of pyruvate is taken. Here, the pyruvate is converted into lactic acid, which is also a 3-carbon molecule. This buildup of lactic acid in our muscles during sudden activity causes cramps. We have already studied in class 7 that aerobic and anaerobic respirations. Aerobic respirations in the presence of oxygen, whereas anaerobic respirations in the absence of oxygen. Right? A person who feels the cramp when there is an anaerobic respiration occurs in a human body. So in 6.8 completely shows that glucose having a 6-carbon molecules in cytoplasm create a pyruvate of 3-carbon molecules plus energy. If it is in the absence of oxygen, it creates an ethanol, carbon dioxide plus energy. If it is with the lack of oxygen, it produces the lactic acid and energy. If this one occurs in the presence of oxygen, it produces the carbon dioxide plus water plus energy, and that take place in the mitochondria. Now, the energy released during the cellular respiration is immediately used to synthesize a molecule called ATP, which is used to fuel all other activities in the cell. In this process, ATP is broken down, given rise to a fixed amount of energy, which can derive the endothermic reactions taking place in the cell. ATP is known as an energy currency of the cellular process. Since the aerobic respiration pathway depend on oxygen, aerobic organisms need to ensure that there is a sufficient intake of oxygen. We have seen the plants exchange gas through stomata, and the large intercellular spaces ensure that all cells are in contact with air. Carbon dioxide and oxygen are exchanged by diffusion here. They go into cells or away from them and out into the air. The direction of diffusion depends upon the environment condition and the requirements of the plant. At night, when there is no photosynthesis occurring, Carbon dioxide elimination is the major exchanges activity going on. During the day, carbon dioxide generated during the respiration is used up for photosynthesis. Hence, there is no carbon dioxide release. Instead, other oxygen release is the major event at this time. Animals have evolved different organs for the uptake of oxygen from the environment and for getting rid of the carbon dioxide produced. Terrestrial animals can breathe the oxygen in the atmosphere, but animals that live in water need to use the oxygen dissolved in the water. So, here the respiration pathways depend on the oxygens and oxygen's intake by the living organism through the environment. The exchange of gases take place during the process of photosynthesis. The carbon dioxide is intaked to make the food, but the other way around, the nighttime when there is no photosynthesis taking place, the carbon dioxide is eliminating actions carried out by the plants in the night. Animals that have a different organs, they intake oxygen from the environment and remove the carbon dioxide from their body. Since the amount of dissolved oxygen is fairly low compared to the amount of oxygen in the air, the rate of breathing in aquatic organisms is much faster than that seen in terrestrial organisms. Fishes take the water through their mouth and force it to pass the gill, where the dissolved oxygen is taken up by blood. So, as we are aware that there's the less amount of oxygen available in the water, the marine animals need to take a more intake of the oxygen or breathing at a faster rate than on the terrestrial animals. Terrestrial organisms use the oxygen in the atmosphere for respiration. This oxygen is absorbed by different organs in the different animals. All these organs have a structure that increases the surface area which is in the contact with the oxygen-rich atmosphere. Since the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide has to take place across the surface, this surface is very fine and delicate. In order to protect the surface, it is usually placed within the body. So there have to be a passage that will take the air into this area. In addition, there is a mechanism for moving the air in and out of this area where the oxygen is absorbed. So any organism have a particular precisely mentioned area where the oxygens are exchange of oxygen or gases take place. In a human being, air is taken into the body through the nostrils. The air passing through the nostril is filtered by fine hair that line the passage. The passage is also lined with the mucus, which help in the process. From here, the air passes through the throat and into the lungs. Rings of cartilage are present in the throat so that it does not collapse but remain as it is for air to pass through. Here is the nasal passage, mouth cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, and through this it reaches to the bronchi, and at the end of the bronchus there is the bronchioles. The alveoli is the structure, it's a globe, it's like balloon like a structure to exchanges of gases. Within the lungs, the passage divides into a smaller and smaller tubes, which finally terminate in a balloon-like structure which are called the alveoli. The alveoli provides a surface where the exchange of gases take place. The walls of the alveoli contain an extensive network of a blood vessel, as we have seen in the earlier years. When we breathe in, we lift our ribs and flatten our diaphragm, and the chest cavity becomes larger as a result. Because of this, air is sucked into the lungs and fills the expanded alveoli. The blood brings carbon dioxide from the rest of the body for release into the alveoli, and the oxygen in the alveolar air is taken up by the blood in the alveolar blood vessels to be transported to all the cells in the body. During the breathing cycle, When the air is taken in the end and let out, the lungs always contain a residual volume of air so that there is a sufficient time for oxygen to be absorbed and from the carbon dioxide to be released. So this mechanism in our body attaches to the lungs and the process of exchange of gases. When the body size of animal is large, the diffusion pressure alone cannot take care of oxygen delivered to all parts of the body. Instead, respiratory pigments take up the oxygen from the air in the lungs and carry it to our tissues which are deficient in oxygen. Before releasing it in human beings, the respiratory pigments is hemoglobin, which has a very high affinity for oxygen. This pigment is present in the red blood corpuscles. Carbon dioxide is more soluble in water than oxygen is and hence is mostly transported in the dissolved form in our blood. So animals take the oxygens, right, and it was carried out with the help of hemoglobin to all over their body. That's the end of this